Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. If you enjoy stories that leave you asking, did that really just happen? You're in the right place. Let's get into today's confession, and trust me, it's not what you think. You think I'm stupid, don't you? That's what I asked her. I didn't yell it. I didn't whisper it, either. I said it like someone who already knew the answer but needed to hear the lie one last time. She was folding laundry. Folding. Like we weren't standing in the middle of a collapsing marriage, surrounded by invisible debris. Here we go again, she muttered, without even looking up. You're exhausting, Felix. That's my name. Felix. I'm the guy who wakes up every morning and wonders if today will be the day my wife finally stops pretending. Or maybe stops laughing at me behind my back. See, there's a special kind of shame that comes from being right, and still being mocked for it. Lately, she's been using sarcasm as a weapon. Every time I ask where she's been, it's, "Oh, did you call the FBI, honey?" Or, "Should I wear a GPS next time I go out for coffee?" I laughed at those jokes at first. Nervous laughs. The kind of laugh you use when you're too afraid to admit you're being disrespected. But it wasn't just coffee. It was late nights. Long showers before going out. Whispered phone calls in the hallway. A second Instagram account she swore was just for art. She told me I was insecure. That I needed therapy. That I was suffocating her with questions. So I stopped asking. I started noticing. And on a Friday morning, a day I'll never forget, I woke up to an empty bed and a half-drunk glass of red wine still sitting on the kitchen counter. She wasn't home. No note. No text. I waited. An hour. Then 2. When she walked in at 11:36 a.m., wearing the same clothes from the night before, she smiled and said, "Sorry, Kendra and I binge-watched a whole season of some trashy dating show." Crashed on her couch. Then she yawned. Stretched. Kissed my cheek like nothing happened. Later that day, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. The message preview read, "Last night was insane. I still smell you." It was from a contact saved as Book Club. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. My stomach already knew the truth. But I wasn't going to scream. Not this time. I printed the message. Folded it neatly. And that night, while she was brushing her teeth, I placed it on her side of the bed. Right there on the pillow. Just waiting for her. She walked into the room humming. Saw me lying on my side, facing the wall. She didn't even notice the paper at first. Then she did. I heard the brushing stop. Silence. Then a pause. A click of her jaw. A whisper. "What is this?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. She walked around the bed and stood in front of me. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Felix," she said. "Where did you get this?" I turned over slowly. Looked her in the eye and asked, again, the same question I started this story with. "You think I'm stupid, don't you?" Her face turned ghost white. She sat down on the edge of the bed without a word. And that's when I knew. She didn't just lie. She laughed at me for believing her. And that hurt more than anything else ever could. She blinked twice and said nothing. That silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, heavy, and crawling with everything she wanted to deny but couldn't. The paper was still in her hand, her thumb tracing the fold I'd made, like she was trying to find a way to erase it just by touching it long enough. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I'd already said more with my silence than I ever had with my questions. "Felix," she finally said, her voice low and careful, like she was testing how guilty she sounded out loud. "This isn't what you think." I let out the smallest breath of a laugh. It surprised even me. It never is, I replied, still lying on my side, still not giving her the reaction she probably rehearsed. Her face twitched, a mix of anger and panic. Like she was mad I wasn't throwing a fit. Like the fact that I wasn't shouting made me harder to argue with. That's the thing about people who manipulate, they need your chaos to cover their tracks. And I wasn't giving her any this time. She stood up, pacing now. She tried tossing the message onto the nightstand like it was junk mail. It fluttered to the floor instead. I don't even know why you're acting like this, she said, avoiding eye contact. You know how dramatic text messages can sound out of context. Out of context? I asked, finally sitting up. It said you still smell like him. She stopped. That's the moment her expression cracked like thin ice. She was waiting for a script I didn't hand her. I didn't accuse. I didn't cry. I didn't offer her the stage. I just stared, not angry, just done. That kind of stare that says, I've already walked out in my head 100 times, you're just hearing my footsteps now. That's when she sat down again, this time slower. Defeated. And she said something I didn't expect. I was going to tell you. Those 6 words sliced through my ribs and left something hollow inside. You were going to tell me, I repeated, flatly. Before or after the book club started meeting in hotel rooms? She looked away. It wasn't just about that. You and I, we've been disconnected for a long time. There it was, the classic deflection. The we card. The illusion that betrayal is a shared decision. I did everything for you, I said. My voice cracked more than I wanted it to. I made this house a home. I let you mock me, belittle me, humiliate me, and still came home every day hoping you'd see I was trying. She didn't speak. So I continued. Do you know what it feels like to suspect the person you love most is lying to you, and then be laughed at for it? You called me paranoid. Crazy. Insecure. She finally looked up. Her eyes were wet, but not with guilt, with the fear of being caught. She was calculating, even in that moment. Felix, she whispered, it didn't mean anything. My body physically flinched. That line. That awful, hollow line. It didn't mean anything, I repeated bitterly. So you let someone who means nothing to you touch you in ways that I haven't been allowed to in over a year? You gave your nothing more than I ever got from your something. I stood up. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. She reached for my wrist. Please, don't do this, she said. Do what? I asked, pulling away. Feel things. She was crying now. Soft, messy tears. The kind she probably thought would make me forget what I saw, what I heard, what I lived through in silence while she lived through someone else. I never wanted to hurt you, she choked out. Then why did you keep going back? I snapped, not shouting, just louder than before. Why did you make me doubt my own instincts every day? She had no answer. Only tears. And that's when I knew I'd already reached the point of no return. The version of me that would have begged her to stay, asked for therapy, tried to fix what she shattered, he died the moment she laughed in my face for asking a simple question. I walked out of the room. Closed the door behind me. And for the first time in months, I slept without imagining who she was texting when she turned away. But what came the next morning, what I found waiting for me in our living room, would send everything spiraling faster than I thought possible. The next morning started with an eerie calm. Sunlight spilled through the blinds like everything was fine, like the world hadn't cracked open just hours before. I stayed in the guest room. It smelled like old laundry and dryer sheets. I barely slept, but somehow, I didn't feel tired. Just hollow. As if something had been removed from me in the night, something I didn't even know was there until it was gone. I expected her to knock. To send a text. To slip a note under the door, maybe. But there was nothing. Just silence. A silence I couldn't tell was peaceful or terrifying. At around 9 a.m., I opened the door. That's when I saw him. There was a man sitting on our living room couch. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, wearing a navy button-down and jeans, elbows on knees like he belonged there. Like he'd been there before. He didn't look nervous. He looked familiar. Too familiar. I froze. He turned slowly when he saw me and stood up like this was a meeting he had scheduled. "You must be Felix," he said. Calm. Controlled. As if we were in a coffee shop, not my home. I looked past him. Lena stood near the kitchen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't even pretending to be guilty. Her expression was cold. Guarded. "What is this?" I asked, my voice raw. "Who the hell is he?" "I'm Ryan," the man said. "I think we need to talk." Lena didn't say a word. Just stood there. Watching me. I looked at her again. "You invited him here?" Her jaw clenched. "You already know everything anyway. What's the point in hiding it now?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the cheating. Not anymore. It was this audacity. This boldness. Bringing him here, the place I built with her. Our home. Why? I finally asked. Not to Ryan, to her. Why would you bring him into this house? Into my space? Ryan raised a hand slightly, as if calming a crowd. "Felix, I'm not here to cause problems. I just thought it was time we—" "No," I snapped. "No, you don't get to show up and act like this is a civil negotiation. You've been sleeping with my wife behind my back. You lied. She lied. And now you're in my house like some counselor." Lena finally spoke. "I didn't know how else to do this," she said coldly. "You weren't listening. You were always so emotional, so dramatic. Because I loved you." I shouted, losing control for the first time. "Because I thought we were still something worth fighting for." Ryan stepped forward. Too close. "I think it would be better if you calmed down." The look I gave him, it wasn't rage. It was disbelief. Pure disbelief. "You want me to calm down?" I said slowly. "In my own house? After you disrespected my marriage and then showed up like some smug guest at brunch?" Lena stepped between us. "This isn't helping," she said, her tone clipped. "We're done. It's over. You saw the message. You made it clear. There's no saving this. Then why is he here?" I asked again. She hesitated. Just for a second. "He wanted to be here, to make sure I was safe." That hit harder than anything else. Safe. As if I was some threat now. As if the man who never raised his voice, who cried in silence for months, who begged for scraps of honesty, I was the problem now. I nodded slowly. And then I did the last thing she expected. I walked into the bedroom. Opened the drawer. Pulled out the manila envelope I'd been keeping for months, bank statements, documents, evidence. Not of her affair. Of my escape. I walked back to the living room, tossed it on the table, and said, "Sign it." I already did. Lena's eyes widened for the first time that morning. What is this?" "Divorce," I said. "And full separation of assets. You can keep the lies. I'll take my piece." Ryan tried to speak again. I raised a hand this time. "Don't. Just don't." I walked out. Left the house. No suitcase. No plan. Just one thought repeating in my head. She brought him into my home because she never saw it as ours anymore. But that would be her biggest mistake. Because now, she was going to watch everything she built collapse, and I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. 3 days after I walked out of the house, I found myself in a coffee-stained suit, sitting in the waiting room of a lawyer's office that smelled like dust and quiet desperation. I hadn't shaved. I hadn't eaten much. I was still wearing the same sneakers I had on when I left. It's not that I didn't have a plan, it's that the plan didn't feel like mine anymore. I had imagined a different kind of ending. One where she cried. Where she begged. Where I finally felt like I mattered again. But none of that happened. Instead, I got silence. No calls. No texts. No, please come back. And so I did what I never thought I would. I pushed the divorce papers forward. Clean cut. No drama. No accusations. Just release. And guess who showed up at the lawyer's office that morning, wearing sunglasses indoors and sipping iced coffee like this was a casual errand between Pilates and betrayal? Lena. And she was smiling. Not a soft smile. Not a sad one. A smug one. Like she was finally getting what she wanted and couldn't even be bothered to pretend it hurt. I stood up, stunned. "You're smiling?" I asked, almost laughing from the shock of it. "Is this entertaining for you?" She tilted her head, as if I were the one overreacting. "I'm just relieved, Felix. You're doing the mature thing. It's about time." The mature thing. The same woman who hid hotel receipts in her jewelry box and snuck around behind my back now had the audacity to congratulate me on being mature. I sat down. Hard. The lawyer, a woman named Ms. Denton who looked like she'd seen every variation of heartbreak, handed Lena the envelope I left on the table. She flipped through it casually, not even reading, just skimming with the attention span of someone reading a grocery list. "I was expecting more drama, honestly," she said to no one in particular. "This is very tame." Tame. I echoed. She glanced at me. "I mean, for someone who cried because I forgot your birthday one year, I thought you'd at least throw a chair or something." There it was again, that smirk. That way she twisted the past, made my pain into a punchline. I looked at Ms. Denton. "Do I have to be here while she signs?" "No," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "You're not required to stay." I nodded. Stood up. Lena raised an eyebrow. "That's it? You're not even going to say goodbye?" "Goodbye?" I repeated, stunned by the audacity. "You already said goodbye, Lena. Every time you rolled your eyes. Every time you lied to my face. Every time you came home smelling like someone else and called me dramatic. That was your goodbye." She didn't speak after that. And I walked out. But this is where things get strange. Later that afternoon, I got a call from my bank. A routine fraud check, they said. Turns out someone tried accessing our joint account using a different IP address, in a different city, to transfer funds to an external account under a name I didn't recognize. Guess what the name was? Art Harland. The man from my living room. The one who said, "I'm not here to cause problems." I froze. The account had been flagged, so no money was lost. But the intent was there. And I wasn't naive anymore. I knew what this meant. This wasn't just betrayal of the heart. It was financial, calculated, and already in motion before I even left the house. They weren't just planning to move on together. They were planning to take everything with them. And if I hadn't left that envelope on the bed when I did, I might have walked into a life that was completely stripped out from under me. But here's where things turn. I made one phone call. To someone Lena never expected I'd speak to. Her sister. And that call. That single, quiet conversation. It changed everything. Because her sister told me something that froze my blood cold. Something even Lena didn't know I was about to use. And the next time we spoke, I wasn't the one who looked stunned anymore. I never really liked her sister, Camille. She was blunt, judgmental, and had this way of making people feel like they were always on trial. Lena once told me that Camille thought I was too soft for her, like Lena was some firework and I was just damp grass. I hated that analogy. But when I called Camille that day, I wasn't looking for approval. I wasn't looking for sympathy either. I was looking for facts, for something real, something I could hold on to while the ground beneath me kept cracking. I didn't expect her to answer on the first ring. "Felix," she said, confused. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "But I think you already know that." There was a pause. A long one. Then, in a tone I'd never heard from her before, less cold, more cautious, she asked, "How much do you know?" "I know about Ryan," I replied. "I know Lena lied. I know she tried to move money. And I know she's not even sorry." Camille sighed. Not one of those dramatic sighs people use for effect. This one sounded tired. Like she'd been holding something in for too long. "Then you deserve to know the rest," she said. And what she told me, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a pattern. Lena had done this before. Before me. There was another man, years ago. Before we met. Someone she dated for nearly a year, same pattern. Got close. Grew bored. Started seeing someone else behind his back while collecting favors, gifts, even access to his finances. Camille said Lena had this switch, a moment where she decided a person was no longer useful, no longer exciting, and from there, it was just a matter of how much she could take before they caught on. "She's smart about it," Camille said quietly. "She doesn't fall in love. She calculates." I felt nauseous. So I was just her next target? "No," she said, and that's what made my stomach drop further. "You were the one she almost stayed with. You scared her because you were good to her. You were boring in the right ways. Steady. Predictable. She couldn't control you with chaos, and eventually, that made her resent you." I sat there in the parking lot outside a cheap motel I was temporarily calling home, holding the phone like it weighed 100 pounds. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was stunned. Frozen. "I only said yes to this call because I thought maybe you deserved better than silence," Camille added. "And because, well, she doesn't know I know about Ryan either." That part shook me. "You didn't tell her?" "No," she replied. "I wanted to see what she'd do. But now that you're gone, and she's trying to move your money, you need to protect yourself." And then she said it, the thing I never imagined hearing from Camille of all people. "She's dangerous when cornered." Dangerous. The word echoed in my ears long after the call ended. Later that night, I went back to the house, not to talk, but to collect a few things. Important documents. My passport. A hard drive. A few personal keepsakes. I didn't tell her I was coming, but I knew she wouldn't be there. She had gym class on Tuesday nights. Or, at least, that's what she used to say. When I stepped inside, everything felt sterile. Cold. Like she'd already started scrubbing away evidence of me. My framed photo on the hallway table was gone. My jacket from the back of the door, gone. Even my toothbrush had been replaced by a sleek electric one that definitely wasn't mine. I walked into the bedroom, toward my side of the closet. And that's when I saw it. An open suitcase on her side of the bed. Half packed. And next to it, a file folder. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Inside were printouts of emails. Conversations. Flight bookings. Apartment listings in another state. A shared lease agreement, not with me, but with him. Ryan. They weren't just planning to run away. They were already planning a life together. In the middle of my grief, my confusion, my devastation, she was setting up a new future like this one never existed. And then I saw the last document. It was a signed affidavit stating I had agreed to vacate our home voluntarily, and had no further claim to shared assets. It was dated 2 days ago, the day after she invited Ryan into our home. It wasn't just betrayal. It was entrapment. She'd been building a legal case in the background while feeding me lies in the foreground. But here's the thing. I never signed that paper. And I never would. Because now, I had her sister's testimony, the bank's alert records, and a timeline that told a very different story from the one she was building. I took pictures of everything. Every single page. And as I left the house, one thought pulsed in my head louder than anything else. She thinks she's 3 steps ahead. But she doesn't realize I just caught up. The night after I found the folder, the one filled with documents that proved she was planning not just to betray me but erase me legally, I sat in the front seat of my car for nearly 2 hours. The engine wasn't running. The heater was off. Just the dull, steady sound of wind whispering through cracked windows and my phone in my lap, lighting up with a notification I couldn't ignore. It was her. Lena. She'd texted me at 9:43 p.m. Hey. I think we should talk. Not argue. Just, talk. I stared at the message like it had come from a stranger. A version of her I used to believe in. The version that still held my hand at dinner and touched my shoulder before falling asleep. But that version of her didn't exist anymore, and maybe never did. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I went back through the photos I'd taken from the folder. The lease agreement with Ryan. The fabricated affidavit with my forged signature. Her email to a moving company titled ASAP, no boxes labeled. She wasn't just moving out, she was moving like a fugitive, covering her trail. Like I was a mess to be left behind and cleaned up by professionals. Then I remembered something Camille had said on the phone. She's dangerous when cornered. And I realized. Lena didn't want to talk. She wanted control. So I gave her the illusion of it. I replied. Tomorrow. 7 p.m. In person. Public place. She responded almost instantly. Okay. The little cafe on Hawthorne. I chose that place for a reason. It was the first place we ever had breakfast together. Back when we still made each other laugh. Back when she used to touch my arm just to feel it, not to guide me or silence me. If she was going to lie to my face again, I wanted it to be somewhere haunted by the ghost of what we were. The next day, I wore something she hadn't seen in years, a blazer I used to wear to job interviews. I didn't wear it to impress her. I wore it to remind myself that I was still someone worth looking in the mirror for. That there was still a man under the layers of shame and quiet hurt. When I walked into the cafe, she was already there. She looked up from her phone and gave me a soft smile. Not fake. Not smug. It was the kind of smile that begged for a clean slate, the kind that manipulative people perfect over time. I didn't sit. I just placed a folder on the table and said, before you say anything, read this. She blinked. What is it? Just read it. She hesitated, then opened it. Her face shifted within seconds. I watched her pupils dilate as she saw the photo of the lease, the financial document with Ryan's name, the email to the moving company, and most damning, the fake affidavit with her attempt at forging my signature. You broke into my things, she said quietly, her voice beginning to shake, but not with fear. With anger. No, I said calmly. I walked into my house and found the folder you left sitting out in the open. I did, however, take pictures. And I made copies. Multiple. She glanced around the cafe, her voice suddenly low and sharp. You're trying to trap me now? No, I replied. I'm showing you that I'm done being the fool in this story. She closed the folder slowly, her fingers stiff, face twitching as she struggled to regain control of the moment. But it was gone. I'd taken it from her the second she realized I wasn't here to apologize or beg or break down. You don't understand, she started. No, Lena, I cut in. I do understand. You and Ryan were never going to run. You were going to erase me, take what was mine, and play the victim. You were going to make it look like I abandoned you. Maybe even manipulate a few tears if anyone asked. That's not true, she said quickly. Then why forge my name? She had no answer. Just silence. I leaned in. Do you know what else I found? She looked up, tight-lipped. Camille, I said. She told me everything. That hit her like a slap. You called my sister. Why not? You brought your boyfriend into my house. Her expression shattered. The corner of her mouth trembled. It was the first time I saw her afraid. Not angry. Not smug. Not dismissive. Just, afraid. You can't use her against me, she said, her voice low and trembling. I don't have to, I replied. You already did that yourself. We sat in silence. The waitress came by, unsure whether to interrupt. Lena waved her off. I stood up. This isn't a warning, Lena, I said. It's a courtesy. I could go to a lawyer tomorrow and ruin whatever future you think you're building with him. But I won't. Because I'm not like you. I want one thing. She swallowed. What? I want you to leave with exactly what you came with. Nothing more. I walked away without waiting for her answer. But as I left the cafe, I glanced back, and saw something that stayed with me long after. She wasn't crying. She was texting. Fast. Desperate. And I knew exactly who she was messaging. Which meant it was time for him to face me next. Ryan's apartment was exactly what I expected, minimalist, beige, overpriced. It looked like a showroom someone staged to impress guests they didn't really want to talk to. I found the address buried in one of Lena's emails, hidden under a travel confirmation for a fake wellness retreat. When I rang the buzzer, I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I just knew I needed to see his face, needed him to know that I wasn't just a name he'd helped erase. That I wasn't going to fade quietly like Lena hoped. He answered the door wearing gym clothes and that same calm smugness he had the day he sat on my couch like it belonged to him. For a moment, he just stared, like he wasn't sure if I was real. You've got some nerve, I said before he could speak. He didn't move. Just tilted his head. What do you want? I walked past him. Into his living room. He didn't stop me. Maybe he thought I wasn't a threat. Maybe he thought I came to cry or plead or threaten. I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed him the same photos I showed Lena. At first, he didn't react. Then, slowly, his posture changed. He leaned forward, took the phone from my hand, and swiped through the images like he was seeing his future disappear, page by page. You didn't know, did you? I asked. He handed the phone back. She told me you signed off on everything. Yeah, I said. She also told me you were her first affair. That wasn't true either. He blinked. What? She's done this before, I said, watching his face harden. With someone else before me. A different guy, same pattern. Same ending. She drains what she wants, builds a new life on a lie, and leaves the wreckage for someone else to clean up. Ryan walked over to his kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it like his throat was suddenly sandpaper. She said you were unstable, he muttered. That you were emotionally manipulative. I laughed bitterly. And what do you think now? He didn't answer. But I wasn't done. There's something else you should know, I said. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here because I wanted you to understand what she's doing to you isn't love. It's leverage. It's positioning. She's already looking at new apartments without your name on the lease. He turned sharply. You're lying. Am I? I asked, pulling out one more photo. A screenshot. A message from her to someone labeled only as L. I need to find a place that's just mine. Ryan's not long-term. He's just useful. His face collapsed. All the confidence, the certainty, the superiority, gone. He slumped against the counter, like I'd just taken the air out of his lungs. Then, his voice barely audible, who the hell is L? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe another friend. Or maybe the next one. For a long time, we didn't say anything. Just stood there, two men who'd been used by the same woman, in different ways, but to the same end. You should watch your accounts, I finally said. She tried to transfer money from mine. I'm guessing you'll be next. He nodded slowly. And then, without looking at me, he whispered, she told me she loved me. She told me that too, I said. Right before she made me doubt my own reality for months. As I walked toward the door, something occurred to me. Something strange. Something that had been tickling the back of my mind since the cafe meeting. She didn't look surprised when I told her I talked to her sister, I said, turning around. But Camille told me Lena doesn't know she told me anything. Ryan looked confused. So either Camille lied, I said, or Lena's been watching me. He frowned. How? And then we both realized it at the same time. Her phone. Her old phone. The one she told me she traded in. The one that mysteriously disappeared a few months ago. The one I occasionally used when mine was dead. She still had access to my cloud account. My locations. My passwords. She wasn't surprised because she knew what I was doing before I even did it. She'd been following me, watching my moves like a chess player preparing 5 moves ahead. And then Ryan's phone lit up with a message. He picked it up slowly, stared at the screen, and turned it toward me. It said, "Don't talk to him. If he comes near you again, tell me. I'll take care of it." There was no name. Just a contact saved. And suddenly I realized. Lena wasn't planning to run. She was planning to stay, and make sure I disappeared quietly. I left Ryan's apartment that night knowing 2 things for sure. First, Lena had underestimated me. And second, she had overestimated her control. For months, maybe years, she thought I was someone who'd sit quietly, doubt myself, and never push back. But when people like her build their lives on deception, they forget the most important detail: the truth doesn't go away, it waits. The next morning, I walked into my attorney's office with everything. The photos. The texts. The bank alerts. Camille's written statement. She offered it willingly after I told her everything Lena had planned. Ryan even sent over screenshots of his own conversations. I didn't have to threaten anyone. They were just done with her. Like I was. Within 2 weeks, Lena's entire narrative collapsed. Her attempt to transfer assets. Blocked and flagged. The forged affidavit. Investigated. Her shared lease with Ryan. Cancelled, by him. And her plan to paint me as unstable and controlling. Shattered the second my lawyer read aloud a text from Lena saying, "Felix is the safest man I've ever been with." Boring, but safe. She sat there in silence at our final mediation, no eye rolls, no smirks, no witty comebacks. Just a woman who finally realized her game had an end. And I'd arrived there before she did. But here's the part one didn't expect. Freedom didn't feel like victory. Not at first. It felt quiet. It was strange waking up and not checking if she was lying. Strange going to bed without trying to read her mood like a storm warning. For weeks, I kept looking over my shoulder emotionally, expecting another twist, another betrayal. But it didn't come. What came instead was peace. The real kind. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Got a dog, her name's Poppy. She barks at her own reflection and tries to eat falling leaves. She reminds me that life doesn't have to be perfect to be good. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I even joined a small writing group. That's where I met someone. Her name's Elise. She didn't ask what happened right away. She just asked what I was passionate about. It felt human. Normal. Honest. Will it become something more? Maybe. But for once, I'm not rushing toward a future or away from a past. I'm just walking forward. Steady. Quiet. Unapologetically me. And I finally realized, I didn't lose Lena. I found myself. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt gaslit, overlooked, or underestimated, how did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. Let's turn this confession into a conversation. And if you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around. There's more truth where this came from. See you in the next story.